AI.
Yeah.
Everywhere you look these days, right? I mean, every time I open the news, there's another headline about it. So we thought we'd do a deep dive into some of the big AI trends that are seriously changing how we live and work, maybe even how we feel, honestly.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing how fast things are changing.
For sure. So we're going to look at three main areas today. First up, AI's role in elections, especially now heading into another election season. Platforms like X are, well, kind of struggling with how to deal with AI-generated stuff.
It's a whole new ballgame, that's for sure.
Then we're going to get into emotional AI. That's AI that can understand and even generate human emotions. It's already starting to change how stories are told, which is kind of wild to think about.
It really blurs the lines between what's real and what's, manufactured.
Exactly. And finally, we got to talk about the big issue, right? Data privacy. AI needs tons of data, but a lot of that data is coming from us. So where do we draw the line?
Yeah, it's a real balancing act between innovation and protecting our privacy.
It is. And our sources this time around have some pretty thought-provoking examples of how this is all playing out right now.
I'm looking forward to getting into it.
Me too. Okay, so let's start with the election stuff. We've got another election coming up, and the role AI is playing is a hot topic. Platforms like X are under the microscope because of all this AI-generated content floating around. Deep fakes, targeted misinformation. It's a lot.
It definitely makes you wonder how reliable anything is anymore.
Right. So we heard from an election analyst who made a really good point. AI can be both good and bad when it comes to elections. It can help educate voters and make voting more accessible.
Right, I've seen that.
But it can also be used to spread misinformation and basically manipulate people's opinions.
Exactly. It all comes down to how the tech is being used. Like X started labeling AI-generated content, which is a good first step towards transparency. But it's just a start, We need way more safeguards to make sure AI is being used ethically in our elections.
Totally agree. It's like a double-edged sword. On one hand, AI could potentially help improve voter registration systems or even catch election fraud. But on the other hand, imagine AI-generated deepfakes going viral and swaying an entire election.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah, that's the dark side, for sure. And it's not just deepfakes. AI can also be used to create these super personalized propaganda campaigns, basically targeting your individual weaknesses and biases to influence your vote.
Like, it's creepy how good it's getting at figuring us out.
It is, and it makes you wonder, what can we actually do about it? Are there any tech solutions or, regulations that can help keep AI in check when it comes to elections?
That's the million-dollar question. Some experts are pushing for stricter rules around AI in political campaigns, especially when it comes to how they create and share campaign materials. Others are trying to develop AI-powered tools that can actually detect deepfakes and other fake news.
Oh, wow. Like fighting fire with fire, almost.
Kind of, yeah. It's like an arms race, with both sides constantly trying to outsmart each other.
Makes you realize how important it is to stay ahead of the curve. If we want to protect democracy, we need to be smarter than the AI trying to undermine it.
So this brings up a really important question for you listening. How do you feel about AI's growing role in elections? What would make you feel more secure about it? It's something to think about. Now let's switch gears a bit and talk about emotional AI. This is where things get really interesting.
Yeah, this is the stuff that keeps me up at night.
Me too, honestly.
Yeah.
It's not just about cold, hard data anymore. Emotional AI is all about systems that can understand human emotions, respond to them, and even create them.
It's like AI is becoming more human, which is fascinating and kind of terrifying at the same time.
Totally. One of our sources, a media critic, said this tech could completely revolutionize storytelling. Like, imagine movies and TV shows where the characters aren't just following a script, they're actually reacting to your emotions in real time.
Whoa, that would be a trip.
Right. But then it gets you thinking, what if AI gets so good at playing with our emotions that we can't even tell the difference between a real human connection and something fake, something manufactured?
That's a scary thought.
Right.
And what about advertising? Like, what if companies start using emotional AI to create ads that are designed to tap into our deepest fears and desires?
Oh man, don't even get me started on that.
Right. Like, imagine ads that exploit your anxiety to sell you something, or political campaigns that use emotional manipulation to get your vote. It's a slippery slope.
Definitely. Makes you wonder if we need new laws just to govern how emotional AI is used in advertising.
100%. We need some ethical guidelines, fast. Otherwise, it's going to be a free-for-all.
And it's not just about manipulation. It's about what happens to our own emotions when we're surrounded by AI that's constantly reading and responding to them. Could it mess with our ability to understand and control our own feelings?
It's like, if you're always relying on AI to tell you what to feel, do you even know what you're really feeling anymore?
Right. And some experts worry that relying too much on AI for emotional cues could make us less skilled at reading real human emotions. Like, imagine a generation growing up interacting more with AI companions than with actual people. What does that do to their social skills?
I mean, think about it. How many people are already glued to their phones, barely looking up to see the world around them?
Good point. So we've got this amazing technology that could help us connect with each other on a deeper level,
Hmm.
but it could also make us even more isolated and disconnected. It's a real paradox.
Yeah, it's definitely something we need to be talking about more.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've covered AI in elections and this whole mind-bending world of emotional AI. Now let's get to the elephant in the room, data privacy. AI needs data to function, and that data has to come from somewhere. Increasingly, it's coming from us, the users, and that's where things get tricky.
It's like the more powerful AI becomes, the more our privacy is at risk. It's a tough trade-off.
It is. One of our sources, a privacy advocate, put it really well. They said it feels like the Wild West out there, with companies grabbing our data left and right, not even caring about our rights or if we even consent.
I've heard that from a lot of people. And it's platforms like X that are really in the spotlight right now because they have so much user data.
Exactly. They recently updated their privacy policy to say they can use user data to train AI models. And, well, let's just say it didn't go over well. People are starting to wonder if they really understand how their data is being used and if they have any say in it at all.
I mean, do you really read those privacy policies? They're so long and complicated.
I know, right? Who has time for that? But the point is, there's a real lack of transparency and control when it comes to our data. We often don't know what's being collected, how it's being used, or who has access to it.
And even when we do know, there's often not much we can do about it. Like, good luck trying to opt out or delete your data once it's out there.
Yeah, it's almost like we become the product, and our data is the currency.
It's fueling the whole AI industry.
So what can we actually do about it? How do we protect our privacy while still allowing AI to develop and innovate?
That's the question everyone's trying to answer right now. I mean, there are some positive developments, like the GDPR in Europe has set some stricter rules around data collection and use, and other countries are starting to follow suit.
Oh, that's good to hear. And there's this whole movement towards data minimization, which basically means companies should only collect the data they absolutely need and nothing more.
Right, like why collect everything if you're only going to use a small part of it? And there are new technologies being developed that could help protect our privacy while still letting AI access the data it needs.
Okay, so it sounds like there's some hope. There are people working on solutions that balance the need for data with our right to privacy.
Yeah, but it's going to be an ongoing challenge, that's for sure.
And it's a challenge that we all need to be part of.
Absolutely. We can't just leave it to the tech companies and policymakers to figure out.
Right. We all have a role to play in shaping the future of AI and making sure it respects our values and our rights.
Exactly. And one of the best things we can do is stay informed, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions.
Well said. Okay, so that wraps up part one of our deep dive into the world of AI. We've covered a lot of ground, from the potential of AI to transform elections and media to the ethical considerations surrounding data privacy.
It's a lot to process. Welcome back. It's like a lot to take in, right? All this AI stuff, we're talking about it, changing elections, how stories are told, and it brings up some serious ethical questions.
Yeah, and that's what we want to focus on in this part. We've talked about how AI can be used for good or bad, but how do we actually make sure it's developed in a way that, aligns with our values, protects our rights?
Right, like it's one thing to say AI could do this or that, but then there's the reality of how it actually gets used.
Exactly. We can't just sit back and hope for the best. We need to be, proactive, setting boundaries, coming up with ethical guidelines, and holding the people who are actually building and using this AI accountable.
Totally. And one of the biggest problems is that a lot of this AI is developed in a black box. We don't even know how it works or what data it's using.
It's like we're giving these systems all this power, but we don't even understand how they're making decisions. Kind of scary if you think about it.
It is. And that's why we need more transparency in AI development. We need to be able to see how these systems are making decisions, what data they're using, what's influencing them.
Makes sense.
Okay.
And then there's the whole issue of bias. If we're feeding AI systems biased data, the results are going to be biased too, right?
Exactly. Data bias is a huge problem, and it can have real-world consequences. Imagine like an AI hiring tool that's trained on data that reflects existing gender or racial biases in the workplace. It's just going to perpetuate those biases, which is not what we want.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. We have to be so careful about the data that's being used to train these AI systems. It needs to be diverse, representative, and free from harmful biases.
And it's not just about the data itself, it's also about the algorithms. Even if you have good data, the algorithms can still introduce bias if they're not designed carefully.
So it's not a simple fix, is it?
Not at all. It's like a multi-layered problem. We need to tackle bias in both the data and the algorithms to make sure these AI systems are fair and equitable.
And we can't just assume it's going to work itself out.
Right.
We need to constantly be checking for bias because it can pop up at any point in the development process. It's like
Oh.
a constant battle.
It is, and it raises the question, who's ultimately responsible for making sure AI is developed ethically? Is it the people building it, the companies using it, or the government?
I mean, it's got to be all of them, right? Everyone has a role to play.
Yeah, I think so too. The developers need to keep ethics in mind, the companies need to be transparent about how they're using AI, and the government needs to set some clear rules and guidelines.
It sounds like a lot of moving parts.
It is, but we can't afford to ignore it. AI has the potential to change everything, and we need to make sure those changes are for the better.
Exactly. It's up to us to decide what kind of future we want with AI. Do we want it to help us solve problems and create a better world? Or do we want it to just make things worse?
And it's not just about avoiding the bad stuff, it's also about realizing the potential for good. AI can help us solve some of the biggest problems we're facing, like climate change, poverty, disease. I mean, the possibilities are huge.
It's easy to get caught up in all the negative stuff, but there's a lot of potential for good too. We just need to make sure we're using it wisely.
Right. And part of that is thinking about the impact AI is going to have on society as a whole. How's it going to affect jobs, access to resources, the distribution of wealth? These are all important questions.
Yeah, it's not just about individual ethics. It's about the big picture. How do we make sure the benefits of AI are shared widely and that everyone gets a fair shot?
Exactly. It's about using AI to create a better world for everyone, not just a select few.
So it's a delicate balancing act, right? Making sure AI is ethical on an individual level, but also thinking about its impact on society as a whole, and making sure we don't create even more inequality in the process.
It is a balancing act, and it's one we all need to be part of.
Exactly. It's not just up to the experts, it's up to all of us to shape the future of AI.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the challenges with AI, the risks, the ethical stuff, the whole data privacy thing. But let's not forget, this tech also has some amazing potential to do good in the world, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it's easy to get caught up in all the what ifs and the scary headlines, but AI is already being used to solve some pretty big problems, like in healthcare, for example.
Yeah, healthcare seems like a no-brainer for AI. So what kind of cool stuff is already happening there? Give us some hope.
Well, there are AI tools that can help doctors detect diseases earlier, like cancer, way earlier than we could before, and more accurately, too, which obviously can be life-saving.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah.
What else?
Then you've got these AI-assisted surgical robots. They allow surgeons to perform these super complicated procedures with incredible precision, and it's less invasive for the patient, too. Plus, AI is speeding up drug discovery so we can develop new treatments faster.
That's amazing. It's like AI is not just improving healthcare, it's making it more accessible too.
Exactly. And it's not just healthcare. AI is also being used to tackle climate change.
Really? Okay, I'm curious, how is AI helping with that?
Well, for one thing, it's helping us develop more efficient renewable energy systems like solar and wind power. And it can optimize energy consumption in buildings and cities, so we're wasting less energy.
Makes sense. Anything else?
Yeah, AI can also monitor deforestation and track other environmental changes, which helps us understand what's happening to our planet.
So we can actually do something about it.
Right, and then there's precision agriculture. This is where AI helps farmers use resources more efficiently, like it can analyze data from sensors and satellites to figure out the best way to irrigate crops or how much fertilizer to use.
So it's like farming smarter.
Exactly, and that means less waste and a smaller environmental footprint.
That's so cool. AI is like this super-powered brain that can process all this data and find patterns that we might miss, right?
Yeah, and that's helping us predict natural disasters better too, like hurricanes and earthquakes. AI can analyze weather patterns, seismic data, even social media trends to give us more warning.
So we can evacuate people sooner and hopefully save lives.
Exactly. And then there's personalized learning. This is where AI tailors education to each individual student's needs.
Oh, I love this idea. It's like everyone gets their own personal tutor.
Right. It can provide feedback, figure out where students students are struggling, adjust the pace of lessons, things like that.
It could be a game changer, especially for students who need extra support or learn differently.
And think about language barriers. AI-powered translation tools could help students all over the world learn in their native language, or it could make learning accessible to students with disabilities.
Wow, the possibilities are endless. It really feels like AI has the power to unlock human potential on a massive scale. It's pretty inspiring when you think about it that way.
I agree. And that's what makes me optimistic. If we use it wisely, ethically, and focus on the common good, AI could really help us create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
Okay, so that's the hope, right?
Right.
But like we've been saying, it's not going to happen automatically. The future of AI is not some set path. It's a story that we're all writing together.
And the choices we made today are going to determine what that story looks like.
Exactly. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We've talked about the risks, the ethical concerns, the whole data privacy debate, but we've also seen how AI is already being used to do some amazing things in the world.
It's complex, for sure. There's a lot to consider.
It is. But it's important that we keep having these conversations and that we stay engaged. We can't just leave it up to the experts to figure this all out.
No, definitely not.
So to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI. We hope you learned something, and we hope you'll keep thinking about the questions we've raised. The future of AI is in our hands, and it's up to all of us to shape it wisely.